Alright, so I saw a comment on a post the other day. It was something I hadn't heard said in quite some time, something that I know for a fact is really not true, something as a matter of fact I've proven to not be true, and so I figured I'd go ahead and do a video on this. So back when I first started shooting precision rifles, the adage was that if you wanted to get into long-range precision shooting, you need to plan on spending twice as much money on your scope as what you spent on your rifle. Now, even back then, that wasn't really true, but it was definitely more true than it is today. And it really surprised me that that was still being spread around today, because today, in today's market, today's scopes, that is the furthest thing from the truth. So back when I first started shooting precision rifle, I've told this story before, I couldn't afford to spend the type of money that everybody said that I needed to, and so I started with a budget hunting rifle, a very inexpensive scope, and I made it work, and I learned a lot from doing that. Today I have much nicer equipment than that, but I can tell you right now, there is not a rifle or not a scope on this table that costs more than the rifle that it sits on, with the exception of maybe one. And it may not, it would be close. So this is actually my very first real precision rifle scope. This is a Weaver Nitrex TR2. They don't actually make this scope as the Weaver Nitrex anymore. It's actually under a different name. It's one of the types of Grand Slams now. But back then, there was not as much to choose from. And if you wanted to spend less than $1,500, there was even less to choose from. And so I bought this Weaver Nitrex, and really it did everything that I needed it to do. It didn't do it as well as some of the other things I could have picked, but it did everything that I needed it to do. And I've had a lot of success with this Weaver Nitrex. But this thing costs about $1,200. To this day, this is the most expensive scope that's on this table right now. With the exception of maybe this Hawk, with this Hawk Frontier, every scope on this table costs less than $1,000, and even the Hawk Frontier, you can find this for less than $1,000, but you may, depending on the market, may end up having to spend slightly more than $1,000. But all these scopes are significantly less than the rifles they sit on. They're certainly not double the cost of the rifles. Most of them, the cost of the rifle is more than double the cost of the scope. So what has caused that? Why is it that that entire adage has flipped? Well, there's a couple different factors. So first off, I can tell you right now, most of the scopes you buy are marked up significantly. That's something people probably don't want to hear, or a lot of people probably don't want me to say, but it's the absolute truth. If you were to get online and just type in Chinese optics manufacturers and look at their price list, you might be surprised at the cost of what an OEM Chinese manufactured rifle scope costs, even a precision rifle scope. Back when I first started shooting precision rifles, this is a Japanese scope. Back then, if you wanted to get into long-range precision, there was a handful of manufacturers, and there were very few what we call OEM scopes. And that all really changed when Athlon came about. So Athlon came to market with all these different OEM scopes, most of them being made in China, with the exception of, I think, their very top model. And all of them were significantly cheaper than all the scopes that people were using at the time for long-range precision shooting. And people started having really good success with the Athlon. Athlon took off, and they started putting out different SKUs, different types of scopes, and they've been a big success. And I think a lot of people have seen that, and because Athlon has had such success, you've now had the market flooded with all these different Chinese manufactured scopes that are of high enough quality, some of them higher quality than even some of the Japanese scopes that you find, with the exception of typically the glass, and have just as many features as some of the even highest end scopes with precision tracking. And you can now get a scope for $500, for well under $1,000, that is going to do everything you need to do. And if you're getting into long-range precision shooting, there is no reason to think that you need to spend an exorbitant amount of money on your precision rifle scope. Now they're getting even cheaper. Like I said, I think it's starting to come out that that the markup on scopes is so high. Now there are some really high-end scopes that even though you are paying above $2,000 or even more than that, the markup is not as much of a margin as even some of these cheaper scopes, because of where they're manufactured, how they're manufactured, the quality control that goes into them. You may have more quality control issues with a lot of these other scopes, but with that quality control, or with the less attention to quality control, you typically have no issues exchanging them and getting one that is within spec, everything good. And the tracking. Back when I first got into this, the scope tracking, even for some of these $2,000 plus scopes, rarely did you see 100% tracking. We've done a tracking test on every scope on this table. Actually, I have. You guys have seen most of them in my videos. And 2 of these scopes track to 100%. 2 of these Chinese-made scopes. I'm sorry, 3 of these Chinese-made scopes. So half the scopes on this table track to 100%. That's something that you didn't even see back when I started shooting out of the extremely high-end scopes. So that's what I wanted to say. Scope quality, the quality of the cheaper Chinese manufactured and even Japanese manufactured scopes has skyrocketed, and price, because of that, because of where they're manufactured, how they're manufactured, has went down significantly. There is nothing wrong. Every single one of these scopes, you guys have seen me shoot out to extreme distances. There's not a scope on this table besides the Hawk, because I just haven't done a whole lot of videos with it here recently. I have actually shot this rifle to a mile, but I didn't video it. It was just kind of out, we were messing around. But every single one of these scopes I have shot out to beyond a mile, and like I said, none of them cost anywhere near the amount of the rifle. So that's just what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how that old adage is dead, how scopes nowadays, there is such a huge selection because of, and I do believe, and I really do kind of credit this to Athlon for coming to market with these OEM Chinese manufactured scopes that were actually quality enough to be used as a precision rifle scope, and still allow people to be successful for significantly less money than the old adage of double the money of your rifle. Before Athlon, most of the Chinese scopes you would see were those really cheap, the $30 Wish or Amazon type scopes, the scopes that really, without a doubt, were not going to had the silly reticles that were illuminated with all the crazy lines in them, supposedly BDC reticles that didn't amount to anything. And with the adage of Athlon, I think a lot of different factories in China saw the success that the factory that Athlon uses was having, and so a lot of other companies followed suit and now have come to market with significantly better scopes than you could even get back then when I started shooting for a third or less of the price. So now we're even to the place where, if you guys just saw me do the 1.5 mile shot with the Arken SH4 Gen 2 here, this scope is right now on Arken's website. Now there is a wait, it is on back order, but you can get this scope right now on their website on back order for $450. And that's a scope that has a 34mm tube. It has precise tracking. I've actually done a tracking test on this. It did track to 100%, 99.5% or something like that, almost perfect tracking. I call that perfect at 99.5%. That could have been an error in my for me doing the tracking test. But that scope is under $500. So they're still going down. The cost is still going down. Now, I don't see them getting much cheaper than that at any point, but that just goes to show that that old adage is completely dead. So if anybody ever tells you that you need to spend twice as much money on your scope as what you spend on your rifle, you can just tell them they're wrong. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.